Tristan Jarry was sent back to Pittsburgh yesterday by management, all the way back from Alberta to work on goaltending in Pittsburgh. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also happen to offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. It's Penguins versus Oilers tonight in Edmonton. That's a 9:38 p.m. face-off. Sidney Crosby versus Connor McDavid, etc., etc. But I'm sorry, the number one goaltender on the organizational depth chart was fully healthy and flown all the way back to Pittsburgh, even though he had been with the team through Winnipeg and Calgary, the first two stops on this trip. And he lives in the off-season in Edmonton, and he's originally from British Columbia, which is where the Penguins will finish this trip tomorrow night against Vancouver. And what? Mike Sullivan was asked yesterday in Edmonton by Taylor Haas of DK Pittsburgh Sports, where's Jarry?
Any update on Tristan?
Yeah, Tristan went back to Pittsburgh on our off day yesterday. He's working with John Elkin, one of our other goalie coaches back there. He's getting some individual time. It's just part of the process that we put in place here over the next little while to try to help Tristan get to his very best.
Was that something you planned at the start of this trip? Or?
Yes.
Okay, you also heard her terrific follow-up. That's really thinking on your feet, because I'm sure that neither she nor anybody else was expecting Sullivan to say, we send him back to Pittsburgh. But she immediately pressed him on whether or not that had been the plan all along. You heard Sullivan answer in the affirmative, but what? There'd been no indication of this from anyone associated with the Penguins through the first two games of this trip. And for any of you who are not all that current on your Albertan geography, Calgary and Edmonton are they're a 3-hour drive apart, south to north on Highway 2. You go all the way to Calgary, it's right up there, and you have people to work with. Andy Chiodo, the goaltending coach, is on the trip. Now, the one elaboration that Sullivan had on this is that Jarry was coming back to work with John Elkin, who is the Penguins' director of goaltending, and that's a position that ranks higher than Chiodo's. Elkin's not on the trip. But, you could have just sent Elkin out there. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. So some things obviously unusual. I'm hardly reaching when I say that. And I guess the part that's the most vexing, really, out of all of this is that everyone from Kyle Dubas on down is reacting this way after Jarry has appeared in 3 games this season. 3 games. Now, yes, he was not good in any of those games. His save percentage was .833. That's 55 points lower than the league average. But that's also what those in the analytics business refer to as a small sample size. Well, maybe more of an infinitesimal sample size. And you and I have both seen Jarry, as well as a whole bunch of other goaltenders over the years, go through slumps that are a lot longer than 3 games. I mean, even as critical as I was of Jarry's, actually all 3 of his performances, I could still count to 3 and not rule out that maybe the fourth or the fifth could be a little bit better. Look, I'm not going to dispute what the Penguins are doing here for the simple and I think fair reason that I don't know why they're doing it. If they deem, for example, that Jarry just needs a mental break away from the game at this stage, maybe needs to be away from his teammates, maybe needs to be away from, being in a situation where he's in the arena and not even dressing for the games, and that somehow drags him down. I'm just speculating, which is probably not all that responsible on my part. But I do think that the one thing that we know out of this, the one thing that we can be certain of, is that they're taking this really, really seriously. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Chase, who asks, DK, are these players not professionals? Having played since junior high, why are they not able to follow instructions? Why are they not able to play together? They have a Norris Trophy winner. Why no defense? It must be the coaching for either having the wrong game planning or the inability to teach and motivate. Mike Sullivan has got to take the heat for this. You seem reluctant to lay the blame where it belongs, DK. Yeah, I do. I'm not sure what response you might have been expecting to that, Chase, but yeah, I do. I have a ton of respect for this coach. I have seen his system work, and how do I put this? At the end of last season, you saw it work too. We all did. That system that they were using to beat all those good teams and make that surge that just fell short, that was basically it. It's just that everybody applied themselves in the front, in the back, in goal once Alex Nedeljkovic went in, and they won games. And they looked like a team that if they carried over that same, how'd you put it? Oh, just playing together. If they were to have somehow carried that across the summer and obviously made some additional moves and adjustments and so forth, meaning to the roster, then this could have been a team that competed like that night after night. Problem is, these guys knew that in that locker room that night on Long Island. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't press pause or fast forward or whatever. And that's why, the guys that I was talking to that night who were taking this so visibly hard, Brian Rust, Chris Letang, Lars Eller, a lot of guys. Sidney Crosby wouldn't budge from his spot in that room. They knew you can't just wave a wand and show up in the first week of October and play the same way. So how much of that is on Sullivan? How much is on either the tactics or the motivation, the two elements that you cite? Yeah, some of it is, for sure. Some of it is. I brought it up just yesterday, actually, from the tactical standpoint. The whole opening segment was about how he needs to change some stuff up. He needs to look at whether or not pinching is such a good idea with the group that he's got. He needs to look at making the Penguins more efficient in their skating backward through the neutral zone as opposed to just standing there taking up space. Actually do something systematic to disrupt the opponent. They currently don't. They just stand there. Watch for it. I'm serious. He also needs to make sure that he's putting the right lineup out there in the right combinations. That hasn't been a massive problem in the early going, but it's been an occasional problem, and it can't be a problem at all. So yeah, I can say those things. What I don't do is just paint with one swipe of a brush and say, fire the guy. I'm not there. I don't know if I'll ever be there. I've held a stance like that in the past regarding other coaches and managers and general managers and even assistants and coordinators. And I've modified that stance as further evidence came in. And I know the easy thing to do with Sullivan is to say, well, he hasn't won a playoff series since. But I could say the same thing about Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. It really does. This scenario, it touches all of them. It just does. I'm going to put this back to you. When you look at, just to cite the same two players I just cited, when you look at Sid's game right now, does he look to you like the Sid over that final 3-4 weeks last season? Yeah, in one game. The Gino 500th goal game. That was it. How's Gino look to you since the 500 goal game? I think he's had a few decent shifts, but not much. Which forward lines have been the two best? Yeah, the third and the fourth. And while it's really cool to be able to praise Eller and Kevin Hayes and even a guy like Noel Acciari, who was their best player the other night in Calgary, they're not supposed to be your best players, and none of this works if they are. So just like I was saying in the opening segment about the small sample size, this is also a small sample size as it relates to seeing what kind of team this is and what kind of macro change it might need. I hope that at least explains my stance. I don't expect you to agree with me. I appreciate everyone who listens to Daily Shot of Penguins, and we'll be back with another one of these on Monday.